What's your favorite scary movie? Hey, man.
We'll tear your soul apart.
Well, I'm Pennywise the dancing now.
We're gonna get you.
Oh, blood on the beast!
God, don't do that.
But sometimes death is better.
Welcome to the KillJoy Jake podcast, where instead of having friends, we have horror movies. I am joined by Sean from SlasherTheory today. How you doing, man?
Doing all right. How you doing, man?
I am fantastic. I'm very excited to talk about Devil's Due with you. One of the first big radio silence standalone movies that they made. What did you think about Devil's Due as a whole, without getting into spoilers or anything yet?
So when I first watched it, I mean, I've never been a big found footage guy. I was never a big fan of the Paranormal Activity movies. It was always something that I've watched them now, and now that I'm really, really into horror movies, I've come to appreciate filming styles, appreciate the visions that certain producers have. Devil's Due is, I think, the movie that got me going, okay, found footage can be good. A lot of people didn't receive the movie well, but you got to look at uniqueness when you come to when you come to these movies, and that movie was not how all found footage movies are. That one had a lot of really unique plot points to it and had a good mystery aspects. You could say that there's some plot holes within the movie, but I like to look past plot holes as much as I can, just because as a movie buff, I'm sure you could look and be like, oh, there's a plot hole. But as a whole, I would say, right off the bat, when I was done it, I started calling all my buddies and going you gotta see this movie. Don't look at the reviews, just watch it. Tell me what you think. And they all liked it too. So as a whole, if I would give it a 1 out of 10, I'd say that it's a good solid 7 or 8 for a found footage movie. It's really good. I like it.
And when this movie was first put out, it was received very poorly. It still currently holds a 14% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is really to me. I feel it's so much better than that. Yes, there are a lot of similarities to Rosemary's Baby and Paranormal Activity, but I think that this film in that finds its own originality. Even Eli Roth had praised this movie years after it came out and said something this is super underrated. I can't believe so many people misinterpreted this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the biggest criticisms of it that I was reading about is who put all this footage together? Because there's that one scene where you have all these people in the masks and they're putting the hidden cameras in their house.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of a plot hole, I guess, in itself, just to say who put all the footage together at the end of the movie. But the radio silence guys have even said it doesn't really matter. They just wanted to make a cool found footage movie that's pretty scary, and I think they succeeded in doing that personally.
Oh yeah, for sure. I I always kind of when I watched it, I've always kind of assumed that the scene when they're at whatever, I think they're on their honeymoon or whatever, and then camera glitches out and you kind of hear that little chant going down, and it's kind of you can't really exactly tell where they're in the room, but it's a ritualistic looking setting. I've always just assumed that these people putting the cameras in are some sort of I'm into some sort of conspiracies, I guess, and I kind of it looked I just assumed it was almost a group of elites, whoever are doing these ritualistic things, kind of watching them and then going in and setting up the cameras and keeping a close eye on them. That's always kind of what I assumed it was. So it wasn't more, for me, at least when I watched it, I didn't look at that as a plot hole and going okay, who are these guys? I mean, who, you don't know exactly who they are, but I kind of had an idea of oh, these are some people kind of watching them and kind of low-key kind of setting all of this up so the events play down in a certain way. That's what it kind of seemed like to me. So I thought that was really unique about that.
Yeah, I really dig that too. I think there's a lot of mystery. Not every question gets answered with this movie.
Mm-hmm.
You're still kind of wondering who are these people? Are they Satanists? Are they just a crazy cult or something? You never really get that answered, and that's fine.
Exactly.
I think living in that mystery makes it a little scarier too.
Okay.
The unknown is the scariest thing ever typically. So I think that's why I appreciate a lot of Radio Silence's movies. But just getting into this, if we just want to break this down plot point by plot point, pretty much, we start off our movie with Zach McCall kind of breaking tradition with your typical wedding stuff. He goes to see Sam the night before, which you're not supposed to do that. So starting off the bat, you're kind of putting some bad luck on yourself there, Zach. But yeah, they are soon to be Sam and Zach McCall. They're about to get married. A lot of foreshadowing in this like beginning scene. I think Sam even says something like, "Come on, like we're not gonna die."
Or there's like when he records a video after, right? And you already know from the start there's like a little I guess they do one of those things where they show like something that happens around the end at the start to make you question, and then they foreshadow it when he records the video. He's like, hey, like you watch this video years later, you know, like don't remember I wasn't always this ugly, you know what I mean? Or I used to be I used to be handsome or something, and then you're kind of like, yeah, but something happens where you're not going to be watching that video or something like that. So I like that was a foreshadowing thing. There was something I heard about this movie that somebody said, because I told my buddy I was doing a podcast on this, and he said, when I told him about it, he said that this is the dumbest film he had ever seen. And I said, just give it a watch again and just really look at some of the plot details and tell me that it's a really bad movie, because it's really not. I just think like, I feel like a lot of people may look at Devil's Due and then they may get scared for Scream without actually watching Devil's Due just because they looked at the review. And it's like, I don't know. There's a lot of, my buddies aren't movie buffs, so it's really hard to like get them into certain movies. They don't like take my word for things.
Well, I think even in this first scene and then going through the entire movie, I think one of the strongest parts of this film that is overlooked is the relationship between Zach and Sam, like, and how it starts off so strong and like they're clearly in love with each other, but then it slowly breaks down into like just absolute chaos. I feel like that's one of the strongest parts of this movie is their characters are both written very well for each other, and like with what ultimately happens to both of them, it's a tragedy, but I feel like it's written very well, and that's like that's one of the strongest parts in my opinion. Just right off the beginning here, we see that a lot. We can see like they're clearly like super in love with each other. They want to get married and all that. Sam says in this scene though that she doesn't know her family all that well. Like she's never really known too much about her family. And then when they finally, they get their wedding, they get married. They like have a like the reception and all that. But like when we finally get to them in Santo Domingo and they go to that fortune teller, she even says something about how like your family is screwed, your family's cursed and all that. And she's giving her all the weird looks and shit. That is okay. That's kind of dumb in my opinion. I'm not going to lie. I don't think, considering the very end of this movie, I always thought it would have been cooler if it was like she was just randomly selected to birth the Antichrist, you know what I mean? But like they try to set up this thing where it's like, oh no, her family line is cursed and all that, even though like we see at the end of this movie there's a girl who is also randomly selected to have like another Antichrist baby. So I never understood that. I don't know. I see your point there, I guess. I never really I guess that's a little bit of a plot hole I kind of overlooked, because I never really knew exactly what that woman was insinuating there, because she's saying stuff like they're coming, they're watching, and I was kind of like, oh, what's going on there? I mean, the ending, I did like the way they did the ending though, like the way that scene was put together at the end. That was really good. One thing I was a big fan of was the scenes in the honeymoon when, like, for instance, when they can't find their way home and they're going through these deserted streets. It gives this sense of fear of being like lost in a foreign country and not knowing where you are, being in like not the best side of town kind of thing, and you're like a little under the influence. I felt that genuine like fear of like, oh shit, like where's their hotel? How are they gonna get back? It's like really creepy outside in this back alley setting, and then they find themselves in this fortune teller shop, and then they're like talking to this girl, and she's kind of like, I liked it, but like you are right there that there was a kind of a creep, kind of, I guess, like it didn't add up too much, I guess is what I'm saying. Yeah, it does make for like very scary scenes though, like you were saying. I mean, like just that whole idea of being in a foreign country, not knowing how to get back to your hotel room and all that. It's inherently very scary. There's a lot of movies that I feel like touch on this whole idea better, but this one is very effective in the way it is. But yeah, I mean, and then just kind of going into this like the party scene here. like they get into this cab and they get taken to this like crazy party. They're walking through this room in the dark and all that to get to like this crazy like underground bar. Dude, like no way. Like if I'm in that situation, I am not walking through a dark room in Santo Domingo. No way. Like I'm leaving. I'm like I'll walk home. You know what I mean?
I don't know why they like I was already like, hey, who's this dude? Like he's like, let's go out, take have some fun. It's like, yeah, where are you taking me? Because it's like you're going down these dark tunnels, and I mean, yeah, you hear thumping music, but at the same time, it's like I don't know who you are. I'm in a foreign country, and you want to take me down a dark, deserted hallway, and I'm just gonna follow you. Like, yeah, I don't think I would do that either. I don't know. That was a little weird.
Oh yeah. The cab driver's also just a little too friendly too. There's so many like really weird and scary things about this, like just getting it started off there. It's great. And this bar, I will admit though, the bar that they go to looks sweet. Like I would love to have a drink there. I just would not like to be captured and then have the Antichrist put inside of me. So.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's like a hidden bar, eh? It's like a little bit of like it's like a little hidden, like for the locals, they probably look at it like, oh, that's like the little hidden club. You go down there and then go through the tunnels, and there you go. You got that little hidden club. So it's probably cool for the locals, and for obviously for tourists, they probably go there. But obviously, that's also the place that they set their victims up in there, I guess.
Right. So like it is cool, but at the same time, yeah, it's like some people don't make it out of there all that well, which sucks. We get this very creepy scene later on where it's like it kind of cuts from what Sam and Zach are doing, and it seems like they kind of like maybe black out or something, and they're like captured. They're taken to this weird looking like sanctuary or something, and then like this ritual happens where all this light comes from the floor. And this is the first time we see that symbol in this movie. Like it's like the circle with lines through it or whatever.
Yeah.
No, that's a cool scene too. You kind of don't know what's happening there. Very like I know you were saying that you'd never seen Rosemary's Baby, but there's like that scene taken directly from a scene from Rosemary's Baby. I mean, like, yeah, like they definitely they borrowed it from Rosemary's Baby to put in this film for sure. So, but it's cool. It's cool, you know. Yeah. But then, like, basically, it flashes forward to them going back home, and they go back to their house, and well, Zach and Sam find out they're pregnant, even though Sam says that she has religiously taken birth control for a long time now. So. Kind of whack there. I love how I love that Zach's reaction to this is like mostly positive too. Like I feel like if I'm in that situation, I'm freaking out a little bit. But Zach is such a nice guy. He's so wholesome. He's like, oh, this is great. We're having a baby, you know, instead of just being like, we're having a baby. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's like, you know what? Let's just make it work. You know, have a baby, have a little family. We just got married, so let's do it. She's kind of like, no, I don't want a baby. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you think about the some of the scenes that were filmed, like vlogging style scenes in the dark when he's recording her and she's like sleeping on the couch, for instance, or like the first time he records her and he goes, he's like, so as you can see, your mommy snores, her eyes, like that scene, that I actually genuinely jumped back when I was watching that again because I forgot about it. I was like, Jesus Christ, because she just like darts her eyes open. I was like, oh, Jesus Christ, close your eyes again.
Because that's kind of where the creepy stuff starts happening, you know, like she's like, he's filming her in the middle of the night. She just opens her eyes and stops breathing, and then then she like grabs his hand, and then he's like, hey, what are you doing? Like, stop.
And it's so creepy because you know that it's like without the camera, you know he's surrounded by pitch darkness. He wouldn't see that unless he had that camera. So it almost is more creepy if you think about how they're in like complete darkness when he's recording that, and then she just like darts her eyes and grabs him, and it's just kind of like, oh shit, that's creepy. Like I'd for sure trip me out. Like if I'm just imagining if my girlfriend did that, I'd be like, Jesus, like I'm gonna leave the room for a little bit. Right.
It's very like, this scene and like a lot of the other like scares we get later on are very similar to like Paranormal Activity and like just other like found footage movies from like the late thousands, maybe or early 2010s. But I think it's effective. I think it's effectively scary. It's not that's something that doesn't get old for me personally, is like that whole idea of having a loved one turn into like this like horrifying creature. There's something wrong with them that there's no way you can fix them. You know what I mean? I think that's inherent. That is very scary And I've had a lot of people, I've read a lot of reviews about this movie, and a lot of people criticizing that, being like, it's so similar to Paranormal Activity by doing scares like that. But I like it. I think it's effective. I think it's really scary. There's a lot more of those things throughout the rest of this movie.
Oh yeah.
One of my favorite scenes in the whole film, which is so subtle, but I feel like it's very creepy, is when she walks over to the lamb meat and she just starts eating it in the grocery store.
Oh yeah, and the kid kind of looks, and the mom's like, okay, yeah, let's go, and she's just, yeah, that shit was creepy as hell. Like it shows, I don't know exactly what to say. It shows her, is it how she's like, whatever, derealization, is that the word, or like how she's just
like
not
devolving.
there anymore. Yeah, devolving. Like she's not exactly there. Like she just starts blacking out at moments where she's not really thinking about what she's doing, and she just starts kind of eating that or whatever. And you don't really know if it's like, is that her doing that, or is it whatever happened to her that's causing her to do that? Like, yeah, that was definitely a very effective scene. I they do that quite a bit in horror movies, but it's always effective when you got somebody just eating raw meat in a fucking grocery store. Like, it's definitely creepy.
I also appreciate that not every scare in this movie is like a jump scare or is something that's like just someone popping out at you. Like, this is something that's just like, it's a long take from like a grocery store camera, and it's just her slowly walking over to like lamb meat and just starting to eat it. Like, and that's inherently like, something's wrong with this person if you're gonna behave like that in public. Like, that's scary, man. It's not something that's jumping out at you and you're making you like jump out of your seat or whatever, but it's like, it's something that's just subtle and creepy the way it's done. There's a lot of moments like that I feel like are really well executed in this film. I've
actually seen a woman in a grocery store, and she started doing that, and I remember like going like, what the actual shit? Like, she started eating ground beef, and the security guard had to come and stop it. So I've actually experienced a woman eating ground beef or eating some sort of meat in the grocery store, and like, I mean, obviously I didn't think, oh, you're possessed, but like, I was still kind of like, what the hell did I just witness? That was a little off. What were you saying, man?
Maybe she was gonna give birth to the Antichrist, you know? Maybe that was just the situation.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, you were saying that one of your favorite scenes in this whole movie is when she's like eating the deer. Speaking of,
yeah, and she's like
shit.
cutting off the deer. That it gave me, I don't know, you've seen that Found Footage Chronicles movie before?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, it gave me vibes to that a lot, but more sinister, dark vibes, more so than what Chronicle gave me. Like that, the scene itself, like I was a little confused at first, because it's like, okay, there's a new set of kids recording. It's like, okay, who are these kids? But then you quickly understand that, oh, these are some random kids that are just kind of encountering the wife. But it's what happens when they touch her shoulder that I was kind of, I totally forgot about that scene. I watched Devils Do when it first came out, so a lot of when you wanted to talk about it, I was like, oh, I remember this movie. I liked it. I'm gonna rewatch it again just so I can like get like a good visual image, remember everything I watched. And there's a lot of scenes I didn't remember, and that scene, I think that stands out as like my favorite scene in the movie.
Oh yeah, no, it's a really scary scene, and like this is kind of like one of the first times we see her like use her like mind powers or something. Like she's like, she has like these like horrible like demon powers and stuff. She's throwing these kids around, and like she throws the one up all the way in the sky and then like shoots him down onto a car, which is like, that's a really cool kill, you know.
I wonder how the filming style was done, like how did they film that. I was always wondering like how Matt and Tyler filmed that, because like that was filmed really well, of like just like giving the sense of like, okay, this person's getting like thrown right up in the air, and like, all right, now she's getting slammed right back in the car, or he's getting slammed right back down in the car. Do you know how they filmed that? I was going to do some research to see how they did that, but I don't exactly know how they filmed that scene.
I'm not 100% sure either. I know, like, if you watch that scene closely when he's like falling though through the like into the car, it cuts, and then you can see like, then it cuts to the dude who's like, he's bloody on the car, and then the car, or the camera, I mean, flies through the windshield onto like the seats. I'm pretty sure there's a cut there. So like, I think maybe they had filmed like, maybe they used like some kind of like a crane or something, and like gotten like a camera up like that, and then like actually dropped the camera and then like cut it to just a guy laying, the actor laying there covered in blood with the camera falling through the windshield or something. That's my guess. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Like you might have been able to use some like VFX there or something. I'm not, now that I'm thinking about that, I'd have to go back and rewatch it to think that.
I think there would be some VFX because there are some scenes that you could look and say, okay, that was a little bit of VFX they added. Like I think there's a scene in the movie where the walls start crackling, and like I think that's CGI or like they done them, but it was done in a really, it didn't look fake. It looked pretty realistic.
Yes, yeah, no, Radio Silence does a really good job at sprinkling in little bits of VFX. Like I don't know if you've ever seen their skit in the first VHS movie.
I've actually never watched the VHS series. You've got me wanting to watch them, seeing your videos. I was like, they seem really interesting, but the VHS series is one that I never watched except for the newer one. I started to watch it. I'm actually still finishing it.
So like they do a skit in the first VHS, and they're it was kind of like one of the first things I ever really did for an actual movie, and it's about a haunted house essentially, and like these hands are coming out of the wall that are like, it's VFX, but it's done really well, and it's only like a little bit of it. Like it's nothing super crazy. Like It from like 2017. Like I feel like that movie overuses VFX so much. Like I really like that movie, but like every opportunity they could have gotten to use some kind of like digital effect, they took it. And it's like, it doesn't always look great. Radio Silence does it in a way where it's like, it's really subtle and it always looks good. And you see that once again in this movie, I feel like.
I know it's like, are you talking about, is there, in this first VHS movie I feel like I've seen a skit on YouTube. Is it a guy recording in like night vision and there's like hands coming out everywhere on the walls, even on like the ceiling and stuff? Or is that another video?
Yeah, like hands are coming like through the ceiling and like and then they get into like they rescue this girl and they like take her in like in a car with them, and then like they get hit by a train. It's it's pretty crazy. It's a crazy skit. I don't know if you've ever seen that. I highly recommend all the VHS movies. I just covered them. They were like some of the first episodes on this new podcast I'm doing. But yeah, no, they're all very good, and it's where Radio Silence got their start essentially, with like big movies actually being in movies instead of their YouTube channel. So
yeah.
But yeah, you definitely see that in this film a little more, like just that tiny use of VFX, especially in the third act, like whenever the whole house is like crumbling and all that, and like the light, when she's giving birth to the baby and all that, like you see that a little bit there, where it's like, it's subtle, it's nothing too crazy, where it would stand out as like being, oh, this is so digital, you know?
Yeah. One scene I think they really did well was a further scene where I think he places the camera down while she's having a nap on the couch, and then her stomach, it just moves in this very unnatural way. So creepy the way they did that. And obviously, they added some VFX for that, but it's done in such a subtle way where like kind of, it looks real. Like it's just like the way the stomach just like moves all weird. Like that was really, really done well. I love the VFX they did because it's not overkill, but it's not too subtle. But again, it's not like, okay, that's VFX. Like you could almost believe that it's just something that happened in the movie. Like it's very subtle, which I like when they do subtle VFX. I don't like you said in it's like every scene's got some sort of crazy like VFX going down. So I like when it was subtle. I'd
have to rewatch that scene, but I almost thought they did that practically, like with a fake stomach. Or I might be wrong. It looks like they had the actress like have a fake like stomach, and maybe they had like a little like a hand or something come through it to make it look like that. I'm not sure though. That could be VFX. Yeah. That's another thing where I'd have to rewatch it again to tell.
Yeah, I just kind of assumed it was VFX because of how unnatural the stomach was, but it could have been practical. You're right. They do a lot of crazy stuff with like practical effects that like you could look at and go like, that's VFX when it's not. So you could be right. Yeah, that could have been something like that.
The mixture of doing practical effects and doing like a tiny bit of digital stuff, I feel like is the most effective way to do a horror movie, especially like this one. Like I don't know if you've ever seen Cabin in the Woods, but like that's like the best example of that. I feel like that movie is like 70% practical effects and 30% digital, but it works so well. Like you see so much practical shit going on screen, if it's like kills or characters like with crazy makeup, but then there's like that 30% where like the robot running around is very clearly digital, but it still looks good because you've been seeing all these practical monsters alongside it, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I gotta rewatch that again. I did watch it though. I do remember it. It is a really good movie. I just think I watched it like last year with my buddy again. I like it. A lot of people don't. A lot of people like. I know a lot of most people like it, but a lot of people throw shade on that movie too for like stupid reasons. Like I think one of my buddies threw shade on the movie just because of some of the comedic value they had to it, which makes no sense to me. I don't know why. It's man, it's hard having buddies that aren't exactly into horror movies because they got so much criticism for them where they don't exactly understand the way me and you may think about a movie, or they're just kind of like, yeah, I looked at the reviews, that movie sucks, and I'm just like, no, it doesn't, man. Just watch it. It's really good. Like, completely off topic, but great example of one that you may not even like either. But Chap, love that movie to death. Not a horror movie, but like so many
Chappie's
people.
a great movie, man. D. Antwoord does the music for that. I don't know if you listen to them. They're a really bizarre band, but I absolutely love them. That's actually why I saw that movie in the first place. But yeah, but that's a good one though, and that's also underrated, I feel like.
Oh yeah, there's so many great underrated movies that people just don't look at just because of reviews. You can't look at critic reviews. That's what I learned a couple of years ago, is that critics don't know nothing, man. You just gotta like watch. They know some stuff, but they don't know much.
Well, and something else you just brought up that I wanted to expand on with this movie is Devil's Due was also criticized for having like a dark sense of humor. And that to me is such a positive in horror films, when you can, when in one moment you can be horrified by something going on screen, if it's a main character you've been watching this whole movie eating a deer out in public, and then the next minute you're laughing about something. I think that's genius, personally. I think if you can do that if you can execute that well, to have that back and forth, that mood whiplash like that, it makes for great movies. I love movies that have a little bit of like a dark sense of humor, blood and gore, horror elements. It's great. It's a stew of a movie, and I that's why I love Radio Silence. You see that throughout all their films, where it's like this like mix of tone and comedy, horror. It's great. It's a great mix.
Oh yeah, Ready or Not did that really well with like a great comedic horror. Like I always, when I tell people you want to get a good vibe on what this new Scream might be like, but cut out the comedy, I say watch Ready or why am I suddenly blanking on the name?
Ready or Not.
Ready or Not, yeah. Watch Ready or Not, and you'll get a good idea on what to expect gore-wise with Scream, because they did a really good job in that movie too. My friend wasn't a big fan of the comedic value to it. I personally wasn't even a big fan of the comedic value to it for Ready or Not, but I do like everything else besides the comedy in it. Like, that's one thing. I judged Ready or Not quite a bit when it first came out. Very much judged it. But like, I'm definitely excited for this new Scream movie. I've been watching a couple more movies that, man, and just like more interviews and stuff with them, and like, man, they picked some really good directors for this new movie, so I'm definitely excited. Devil's Due is very underrated, but I mean it's a really good. I think if you watch Devil's Due with an open mind, you could get a love for found footage movies just right off from that movie.
Yeah. I think that these guys are perfect for Scream, because like we've been talking about, I mean, they have this mix of comedy and horror in their films that like the Scream franchise could use a fresh take on. I mean, that's what that series was built on, essentially, is comedy and horror. And it's like,
oh yeah,
it's not even intentionally like a horror parody. It's commentary on the genre, but it's and it's a little funny, it's a little meta. I feel like these guys would do that very well, and that's why it's clear. That's why so many people are excited about this film. It's not just because we're getting another Scream movie. It's because probably the best choice for directors are in charge of it, if that makes sense. The Radio Silence guys are gonna be great with. Hopefully, they're doing a whole new trilogy of Scream films. But you see that in movies like Devil's Due, Ready or Not, where it's this blend of horror and comedy, where and black humor specifically, like this dark humor where it's like dropping F-bombs all over the place, bloody, gory jokes. Very similar to like Eli Roth. I know we were talking about him before. I don't know if you've ever seen The Green Inferno before.
I have, that's twisted. That's a twisted ass movie, man. That movie's really good. That's the one about the island, right? And the people that end up on the island with all of the tribe or whatever. Is that the same one we're talking about?
Yeah, they're in like South America, and like they go into like they like the cannibal. It's like a cannibal tribe, and like they get these like college kids get captured by them, and like they get eaten by them. But it's like it's very dark. Like it's a very dark and scary situation, but it also has like a bunch of jokes throughout it too. Like the whole tribe gets high at one point, and like they get the munchies. Like it's so funny, you know. It's that style I feel like would be great for a new Scream film, because it's like in the past all the Scream jokes have been kind of mild, like, you know, in all the other 4 Scream movies, like the jokes have been a little more mild, and I feel like to put that kind of twist on it and give it that sort of edge for a new one would be great.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people are really expecting this movie. Like I expect that this new Scream movie will have some tad bits of comedy. I think it's going to be more dark, like a lot darker than the other ones, like tone wise. But like I do think like you can change your formula, but you got to keep some of the iconic like comedy moments in this new Scream. Which, I mean, they do kind of show their mild comedy within the trailer of like, oh, you ready for this? And she's like, oh, for this? Yeah, never. Like, you know, little comedy things like that where you're like, yeah, I'm not ready for this, but let's go do it. Yeah, I definitely like, obviously I think that it's great that it's like, obviously I've watched all the interviews that Matt and Tyler have talked about. I think it's great that it's fans making these types of things. I like that Matt and Tyler are not only fans of Scream, but they're fans of all of the movies they make. They're big fans on the properties that they make. So it's, I know a lot of directors just see money and stuff and they're like, oh, let's make this, you can make a lot of money. But it seems like Matt and Tyler take so much passion into what they create. Like they're not just doing it because they want money. They're doing it because they love doing it. And that's why I have so much respect for them as directors and just people as whole, is because they sound so genuine when they talk about movies they make. They sound like just 2 friends that are like, yeah, we created this really cool thing, like check this out. And that's what I love so much about it.
They're just like big horror fans. Yeah, you're right, and that's what's going to be so great about this new movie. You see that in this film. I mean, I know these guys like Lindsay Delvin or whatever was the writer of this movie, but you still see like those connections to Rosemary's Baby, Paranormal Activity, and you know, like that's from a director's standpoint, you're aware of that reading the script, and you're like, okay, we gotta do that, but in our own way. Those same kind of scares, those same kind of jokes, we're gonna implement those into our movie and do it in a new, dark, twisted way. And Devil's Due is a great example of that. I just feel like this movie's so underrated. I talk about it a lot on my channel, and I've gotten some people saying like, oh, wow, that movie sucks. This is the same guys that are doing the new Scream. Like, that's so scary. But this movie's very underrated. I think it does a lot of really scary things. You see Zach and like, and something that I feel like is, I know I've already talked about this, but Zach and Sam's relationship together is written so well, and how like they start off loving each other, and then like midway through the second act, we're seeing them fighting over all this crazy shit just because like she's going nuts and all that, and he doesn't know what to do. Zach is such a nice and wholesome guy, and he has this horrible, tragic thing happen to him. It's almost kind of funny, you know what I mean? It's how it's done, and you know Matt and Tyler were cracking up right making this movie. I feel like
the church scene when they go visit church and the priest starts staring at her from like across the way. Fuck, that shit creeped me out, man. Like, it's so eerie the way he's staring at her. Like, he looks so petrified, and she's just, and then it kind of, the camera turns and her eyes look bloodshot as shit from like the side, like the way, like she's staring right back at him, but it's his face. He looks so petrified, and I just got like so creeped out from that, especially then his nose starts gushing, and then he goes to see him after in the hospital. Like that, oh man. I could go into that scene for a while. That scene it's so eerie the way it was filmed, and like I got amazing props to whatever actor was playing the priest, because the face he puts on when he's staring at her, that just adds to the whole scene, because you really feel that like, okay, this dude's like really terrified on looking at her. He sees something in her, and like that's what I really like about that scene.
That's one of the most upsetting scenes in the movie, I feel like. And it's not only just because like if you're someone who's like maybe religious or something, I could see that being upsetting, because it's like it's a priest like breaking down, throwing up blood and all that. You know, that's so horrifying, and like his nose starts bleeding and all that. You also see the cab driver in the back sitting in one of the pews. It's the same guy from when they were in Santo Domingo, and he was like the cab driver. He's sitting in the back, just like watching all this unfold, which is like, it's so creepy. Zach finds that later on his computer, and like he sees the scene where like that the camera accidentally started recording, where it's like the scene where they're in that sanctuary or whatever, and they like the ritual starts happening. He sees all that, and then he finds that scene of the guy, like the cab driver, like at the church with them. Like that's so scary. I feel like that's something like that. Yeah, that's kind of a trope for found footage movies to like go and review the footage and then like you see something that you might have missed at first. But it's done really well here. Once again, where that happens, and then when he comes back, the footage is deleted, which is also scary.
Yeah, that I guess that also shows the whole like you're being watched 24/7 by these people, and they're not gonna let you just go and like out somebody. So when you go call up your buddy, we're gonna sneak in and just take your footage or whatever. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. There's so many interesting plot points with this movie, like and so many foreshadowing moments that they do that if you really go back and watch the movie, like for instance, I didn't notice that in the church. I didn't even notice when he was reviewing the footage that it's the cab driver scene. I thought it's just somebody else that he's like, oh, this is like somebody I've seen before, but like I didn't notice it was the cab driver. That's really interesting.
Yeah. It's really I love the whole second act of this movie, like just showing Sam's character devolve like that. You see these little Easter eggs and stuff like that you might have missed at first. But the third act is where it kind of just starts going like full on balls to the wall crazy, because like he goes to that house where all like the cult members are and stuff, who are watching them, and he sees like his whole house is on display with the secret cameras and shit. What do you think about the third act though, when Sam is actually like giving birth to the baby and all that?
I was really like I like the way whoever these people are set the cameras up, because when Zach is like shows up to her and she's kind of like, I think it's in like the dark, he puts the camera down, he goes up, he's like, you okay, like what's going on? And then everything starts to kind of go off the charts at that point. He doesn't really know what's going on, and then the camera switches to one of like the cameras that aren't theirs, and it almost for a second looks like a regular scene in the movie as he gets thrown up into the wall and she's like doing that to him. I really liked how that was done, because it's cutting from all these cameras in the room, showing us different views to what's happening. I really like that scene. I also think again the little CG effect or CGI effects they use for her, like lighting wise, when she like takes that, another foreshadowing event back early in the movie when she gets the gift or whatever, and she looks at it and it's a little knife, and you're like, oh, what's that for? You seem a little too connected to that thing. There's got to be some reason why you're looking at that and going like, and then hiding it when your husband comes in. So I also like that, because that's another foreshadowing event. So I was really into that. The very end though, I feel like if you don't really, I feel like if you missed, so this is like, I guess, a little criticism about the movie. If you missed one or two scenes in the movie, that scene's going to really confuse you. Like if you missed just one or two like plot filling scenes from the movie, let's say you had to go to the bathroom or something during like just one or two scenes, you may get a little confused by that scene, especially if you weren't catching on to what they're saying in the movie. Like for me, I was already catching on, okay, you have the Antichrist growing in your baby or growing in your stomach. That's what you're getting to give birth to. But overall, music was done really well. Soundtrack was really creepy in that scene. And the filming style, my favorite part about that scene was the way the cameras start cutting off from Zach's camera to like the cameras of these people. Because you get like an overhead view, and then you get like a view from like, I guess, a camera that's on the desk maybe, and then that's that view right there is the closest view to like, kind of looks like just a regular camera showing up like a scene from a regular movie. And it takes for a second, you get taken out of that whole home footage aspect for 1 second as she's like throwing him up against the wall. But in general, I love the way they ended it off with the cab scene, and the way they kind of, it's almost like, all right, now we're just gonna redo it all over again. I like that. Right. It looked really cool. I think it was really cool. What did you think about the ending?
Well, it makes you, so two things on that. I think like when she actually gives birth to the baby and she's like laying there dying, that's the first time since like maybe the end of the first act where it's Sam again. You know what I mean? It's not like Sam being taken over by like some kind of like demon, some kind of like she's not like acting all crazy. This is the first time where it's like she's literally at death's door, and like she has this moment with Zach, and it's so tragic because she dies like 10 seconds later, you know? And
yeah,
then the police come and all that, and Zach gets taken. We see him being questioned and all that. And it's just like, it's so unfortunate. Zach is this wholesome, nice family man that all he wanted to do was have a family and get married and all that. And it just ends in tragedy for him.
For sure.
It's scary. It seems like, oh, this could happen to anybody, even though like, yeah, it's totally supernatural and crazy, but it is, that element of it makes it so real. And I really appreciate that. I think that's really scary. and it was written pretty well. But yes, the ending scene where it's like it's a whole new couple, they're in Paris and they get picked up by the same cab driver. It makes you question, like, do they need like an army of antichrists? Like, what is going on here?
Yeah,
Like,
that was the one thing I had question about this, is because I already knew this movie was about, like, you know, like the birth of like how they're gonna birth the Antichrist out. But that did confuse me. I was like, okay, well, is there like, but I do know that they do kind of quote that at the start, that there like will be multiple Antichrists born. They almost say that, so it's not like, it's like don't expect one, because they kind of even say at the start that like, where they say something about like the children will see the Antichrist, there will be many more, or something like that. I can't remember. Something along the lines of that. Yeah.
And then the priest actually quotes that in the hospital scene when Zach goes to visit him at the hospital. Yeah, no, that's so interesting to me, but it still leaves you with so many questions about this movie, and I think that's what's genius about it. It's still very mysterious. You don't have all the answers. It's very it's scary like that. I love it. I think that it's like what leaves you wanting more, even though I don't think I would ever want a sequel to this movie.
That's the thing, right? Like it's with horror movies, it's great when you get an explanation, but at the same time, it's like if you don't do it right, you may ruin your original property. For instance, like explaining why Jason can't die, explaining why Michael Myers can't die. They're always very like, it's like, okay, you can leave it to the unknown, where everybody's like, okay, we like the unknown because you can theorize and do whatever, or you could set it like, do a set in stone explanation here, and people are either gonna like it or they're not gonna like it. For Devil's Due, I would have wanted a sequel, but again, I wouldn't have wanted a sequel, because I feel like I would have wanted a sequel where maybe Zach figures it all out and he goes back to his normal life, but then he wants to actually try to figure out who these people are and why they just completely home wrecked his whole entire family. But that's what I feel like they would mess it up. They wouldn't be able to come up with something they wouldn't be able to come up with an explanation that doesn't feel like, that's cheesy. So I do like it when they kind of leave it the unknown. Now they leave it for us to theorize. Okay, well, what's going to happen next? Like, I'm going to go with, okay, he eventually gets proven innocent. Okay, what does he do next? Like, it's better if you just leave it in your imagination. Like for Scream, I hope we get a trilogy. Like, I hope we get a whole new trilogy started. That's just like, so I'm fine with that. But yeah, you're right. There's some properties where it's better just left alone.
Yeah, where you're just you're left to stew in the mystery, and you have no idea what's to come next. Yeah, no, I 100% agree, man. I really like Devil's Due. I think it deserves much more than what the critics gave it. Like, before we end this podcast, Sean, do you have any like last thoughts on this movie that you want to like give out, put out into the world?
Yeah, I'm not too much, but I will say, if there's anybody else here watching this that hasn't seen the movie, like, just go give it a watch. It's a really good movie, and especially if you guys can watch Killer Clowns from Outer Space and have love for that, like, you can have love for Devil's Due, man. Like, it's a really, like, I have love for Killer Clowns from Outer Space, but like, come on, it's not a good movie, right? Like, it's not like one you're like, wow, you need to get a Grammy for that movie. That movie was so intricate, the plot, like, no, it's a movie about aliens in a carnival-sized spaceship running around. So, like, a lot of people will love that movie, but then not give Devil's Due a watch because it has bad reviews. I would say, if there's anyone who's watching this that hasn't seen Devil's Due, definitely give it a watch. My favorite scene in that movie was just the deer scene. I love it. I've watched it like 5 times since watching the movie, and I just think it's really, really well done. Can't wait for Scream. I had a fun time on the podcast, man. I hope we can do another podcast again some other time when maybe Scream comes out. I think it would be fun if like me, you, and somebody else were talking about the movie or something. There's so many theories. It's fun to theorize about Scream, man. Like, they're making it like a little game for us, which I love that. So.
Oh yeah, this whole like 12 days of the Scream holiday
thing,
like, that's so cool.
I think it's awesome. Yeah. The marketing's crazy. I didn't think that they'd be doing some marketing like that, but like the marketing is really, really good for that. But yeah, I don't think I have many more thoughts on Devil's Due. I think we covered mostly everything that I wanted to talk about, but I think I'm going to do some more research on the movie, try to figure out if there's some of those scenes were practical or how they filmed some of those scenes, because I'm really interested, because it obviously felt like a little bit of a low budget movie, but like low budget on purpose, because that's how they had to do it.
Yes. Yeah. And for it being so low budget, I think it executes what it was going for very well. It's
Yeah.
you can look at this movie and say that it's just a found footage version of Rosemary's Baby, but I feel like it's so much more than that. It's a lot of fun. You're invested in these characters all the way through. You kind of like, you really want to like them at the very beginning of this movie, and to see what happens to them at the end is very tragic and upsetting. It makes you feel, it makes you scared, it makes you laugh at different points. It's a great blend of a movie, and I think it's aged a little better than when it initially came out. I think people were just seeing Paranormal Activity when this thing came out, in the trailer especially, but it's so much more than that. It's so much more than just another Paranormal Activity ripoff. So
yeah.
That's basically all I got to say about Devil's Due, but I just wanted to thank everyone for listening to the next episode of the KillJoy Jake podcast. We will be talking about Southbound next week. I still don't know who my guest is going to be for that episode, but that is the next Radio Silence movie. Very excited to talk about that one. Probably one of my favorites from them so far, though. So I'm very excited to get into that one. Sean, thank you so much again for coming on the KillJoy Jake podcast. Make sure to check out Slasher Theory on YouTube. Go subscribe to his page. And then I guess I'm just going to end this. So thank you all so much. Thank you all so much for, thank you for coming on, Sean. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no problem. I had a fun time, man. It was good to meet you finally too. Yeah, I really enjoy the content that you put out, man. I feel like me and you make we have some similar thoughts on like some of the stuff that we think about when it comes to the movies, and I like to come on and hear like what other creators' theories are, especially for Scream. Like I'm a sucker for your Scream videos when you come out there and I watch them, because I'm like always like, hey, I want to know what Jake's theorizing. So I'll watch something, I'll be like, all right, now I need to see what Jake says. And I already know you're gonna have a video 30 minutes out. Like it's a little harder for me to get my videos out because I'm working right now and doing like a lot of late night work. I usually edit at nighttime, but it's definitely cool to theorize with everybody and see what everyone has to think about it. So great job on the content too.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. Means a lot. Well, thank you all again for listening, and as always, don't forget to kill it out there, y'all.